and welcome to Stork'd, the podcast in which we explore the many ways people build and define family. I'm really excited to introduce Ali to you guys today. This episode is a little bit different than some of our others. While many of the Stork'd episodes really focus on a personal journey to discovering what your values are and how you personally wish to define your family, in this case, we've actually got an expert who is an acupuncturist. She runs this really incredible acupuncture group in Boston, which I have attended personally. But she's expanded to some interesting online offerings. And the reason I invited Ali is that so much of the process to define family building, and often the physical process to go through it, if you're doing an IVF or an IUI journey, or even going through an adoption process, which can be quite stressful, sometimes you need the tools and resources to support and nourish yourself. And I think Ali has a suite of offerings that are really interesting and really spend some time informing us about the female body and how you can use tools like acupuncture, acupressure, nutrition, and other resources in order to take care of yourself as you're going through some of the ups and downs and stressors of family building. So really excited to introduce this one. It is different, and I hope you gain a lot from it. This episode does tend to focus a little more heavily on those people with a uterus who might intend to carry a child. But I'm hoping that we can all learn a little bit about how taking care of our bodies can help us through these stressful moments. And I just think Ali has a really interesting perspective. So welcome, Ali. Don't forget, if you're loving Stork'd, and I hope you are, to please review us, share with friends, leave comments, join our website, all that good stuff. Thank you.
Welcome to Stork'd, the podcast about the many ways people define and build family. And I have Ali from the Intuition Wellness with me here, and I am so thrilled to learn about acupuncture and how it can support the fertility process. Welcome, Ali.
Thank you. I am so happy to get to talk to you about this. It's something I'm so passionate about. I could talk about it all day long, so I'm thrilled that you wanted to have me on to chat.
I'm thrilled to have you. So let's start by hearing a little bit about your story and what prompted you to launch the Intuition.
Sure. So the backstory is that I grew up getting acupuncture. So this is something I wanted to do as a child. I started at 7 or 8 getting acupuncture for immune problems, chronic colds and things like that as a kid, and asthma. And I loved it. And once my asthma resolved, I took a hiatus for a long time. And then right before college, I had some really strange symptoms. I was losing my sight at times. Like I would black out. I would lose feeling in half of my body, severe headaches, things like that. And at the time, they thought it might be MS. And I went back for more studies, more brain imaging, a couple years in a row, and nothing changed. So nothing in my brain changed, but my symptoms changed. So I went to see an acupuncturist during this time when the doctor said, we'll just wait and see. And when I returned to acupuncture, we went over my lifestyle, my diet. I was on supplements, herbal supplements, and everything resolved, all those symptoms, and nothing changed in my brain. So they thought maybe we misdiagnosed it. So I think it had a lot to do with hormone imbalance and stress-induced hormone imbalance in particular. And that's where my passion for the work that I do came from, recognizing the value of acupuncture and Chinese medicine in transforming our health, particularly as it pertains to stress and hormone balance. So
that's so interesting because having received acupuncture in the past, I tend to think of acupuncture as this wonderful tool for pain management. I think of it as almost muscular, but you're telling me that it really hits your hormone system.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, it's really well known for pain. And when it comes to health insurance, the majority of them cover it for pain, some exclusively for pain, but it's getting so much more attention for the other things that it can do. In terms of what it does with fertility, whether that's supporting you naturally to conceive or with the support of an IUI or IVF or even egg freezing, it's really getting a lot more attention there, and reproductive endocrinologists and OBGYNs are referring. So it's really exciting to get the support of the allopathic medical community and see that we're not competitive, we are complementary.
Yeah, so you're saying it's really the medical community is changing its perception around how to work with acupuncture.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really great in conjunction with cancer treatment. That's one place where it's usually in cancer departments. It's also really common in pain management clinics and now in fertility. Like a lot of the local IVF clinics, not just local, national IVF clinics will have an acupuncturist on staff.
Well, that's really great. So much of your work with the intuition is focused on fertility and supporting the hormonal, what do I say, like the changes that somebody goes through as a part of the process. Clearly, I'm a newbie. I don't fully understand this. Can you explain to somebody like me how acupuncture and fertility go together?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people don't even know about their bodies that there are 4 distinct phases of a cycle, or you could really say, for simplification, that there are 2. There's pre-ovulation and post-ovulation. The first half is called the follicular phase. The second half is called the luteal phase. And when we break that into 4, menstrual phase, pre-ovulation, ovulation, and post-ovulation, acupuncture can support the unique hormonal transitions at each of those phases. So we support the removal of the lining with your period and the start of a fresh cycle. Then we help to build estrogen up, which then triggers LH to release an egg at ovulation. And then we help support keeping progesterone high for implantation in the fertility process. Or if you're just trying to get a regular cycle, then we're just supporting the phases of the cycle so that everything's regular. It happens on a predictable schedule. And when you are ready to conceive, you have a predictable cycle that is conducive to conceiving.
So a little bit of like physical stability in your body.
Yeah, exactly. Everything about us, our minds, our bodies, all crave routine. And that's part of what homeostasis is about, balance. And so our bodies do want to be in balance. And acupuncture is just a really gentle nudge in that direction to reestablish what was disrupted by our daily lives, our diets, lack of sleep, pandemics.
I was going to ask, when you say our bodies crave stability, we are currently in an unprecedented and destabilizing time in this pandemic. I imagine the combination of the stress of trying to build a family and the stress of a pandemic might be just too much for some bodies to take at the moment. So if a client is experiencing that, they're just feeling like they want to get pregnant or they want to build a family and they're having stress around the pandemic, how would they work with you? What would be your process to support somebody in that?
So we've always made stress and anxiety management a priority when we're treating for fertility or really anything in our clinic, whether it's pain or a digestive issue, because we live in a world, and it's only exacerbated by a pandemic, but it's always been that we have too much on our plate, not enough time to rest and reset. So stress management is priority number 2, second to whatever they came in for. And we do that with acupressure or acupuncture points. We do that with diet recommendations, because the diet you choose can be either detrimental to your health or very supportive and soothing to your body and your mind. So, and we could talk about that alone. It's really neat, but how we can care for ourselves with food, and that will calm our systems overall. And other lifestyle things, we talk about meditation, mindfulness, qigong, and those are things that we not only recommend in our clinic, but we also have tools outside of the clinic with online programs that we've developed and in virtual appointments where we will guide people through guided meditations that support their mental health as well as their physical health.
And you said a couple of words that our audience, including me, may not fully understand. So you mentioned acupuncture and acupressure. What's the difference between the two of those?
Okay, great. I'm glad you asked that. So acupuncture is the stimulation of acupoints along the body using a needle. That's the word puncture is specific to the needle. Acupressure is the same idea where you're stimulating an acupressure or an acupoint, but you're using your fingertip or some other blunt object to stimulate that point. So it's something that you can easily do at home with a little training about where points are located. The way we like to think about it is where there are blockages in energy throughout our body, there are symptoms. That could be lack of blood flow to the uterus and to the ovaries, which would affect egg quality or hormone response or the thickness of the lining. Or it could be blockage that's causing pain somewhere.
Wow. Okay. So that sounds like you have to use a lot of diagnostic resources, the ability to determine those blockages. And it sounds like a little bit of like magic.
I know, it really does.
Yeah. So for somebody who might be a little nervous to try working with needles for the first time, it sounds like relatively harm-free. That feels a little easier to think about than just getting stuck with needles.
Yeah, acupressure, absolutely. Yeah, and it's a very effective tool. People think that because acupuncture, we use needles and we insert past the level of the skin, that's the only way to stimulate a point, but it's not. And acupressure can be so effective. And what I love about it is with a little training from us, with a consultation or through our online programs, you can become very confident with applying it yourself, knowing how to find the points, where to find the points, and how to apply effective stimulation at the point.
I love this that you keep talking about this self-healing or figuring out how to support yourself throughout whatever journey you're going through, whether it's fertility or pain management or whatever, because it takes the reliance on an outside person to fix something away from the process, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's not for everyone, honestly. There are plenty of people who just want to come in and receive treatment and then come back the next week. But the people who will see the most transformation will be the ones who put in the effort at home and want to make this, this is kind of cliche to say, but like a lifestyle change. When somebody comes into me, I recognize that that's, people are putting money on the table. They're putting themselves into a vulnerable position, and it's an opportunity there to make a major change that's going to improve your pain, or really it can transform your life. That's why I became an acupuncturist, because it was so transformative for me.
Yeah. And I have heard a number of stories on this podcast and outside of the podcast about a feeling of a loss of control, particularly if you're on a fertility journey, that like all of a sudden there's this thing that you have no say over, when all other things in our life we have some semblance of control over. So what I love about the choice to go to an acupuncturist or the choice to do it at home and support your own health is it feels like taking a little bit of the agency back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I talk about agency all the time. I think it's such a valuable tool. I keep talking about the online courses that I design. Conceiving Zen is the course that I designed to support people either exclusively online or to supplement what we do in the clinic, with a lot of information on how to change your diet and how to change it appropriately to your fertility type. So in the program, there's a questionnaire, like a quiz, to determine your fertility type, or you might be into a couple of different categories. And then throughout the program, you're guided through lifestyle and diet recommendations based on your type. So there's a level of customization to it, even though it's all self-guided. And that gives people agency, knowing that they have tools that they can control and that make a difference. All of the tools that I included in this program have been proven in research studies to improve outcomes in fertility, whether that's egg quality, lining thickness, hormone balance. When people do the course, it's designed as a 1-month course through, one cycle, but I encourage people to do it until they conceive, because each month that you're doing it, you're getting your cycle into the conditions of your cycle are more conducive to conceiving. So there are real tangible tools that you can use to take back control and agency in this process that feels really destabilizing. Something that you thought would come easily isn't. And you're like, I don't know what else I can be doing. And I lay it out for you so that you now know what you can be doing to control the process.
That is such a wonderful resource to have available to anyone. And while you're based in Boston, I love that these are available online, because you can be anywhere and use them.
Exactly. And I offer virtual appointments in conjunction with the program. So if anybody has questions or wants to dive a little deeper into the customization of the program, we can do that. And all of the tools are effective and easily accessible to anyone throughout the country, or presumably the world.
Yeah, so there's so many things that you just said that I want to explore a little bit further, if you don't mind. The first thing you talked about was fertility types. I have never heard that, but I am one of those people that, like, if there's one of those silly quizzes, like which Friends character are you, or, whatever it may be, is a fertility type something like that, where you just take a quiz and it tells you like a personality test?
It is like that. And it's something that I designed, the fertility quiz and the types. These are based on typical diagnostic patterns that we would see in the clinic and treat. So I identified the 5 most common fertility types or patterns that I see in the clinic that I'm consistently treating, and then actually created a quiz. So you can go on my Instagram, Intuition Wellness, and in the link, you can take the fertility quiz and you can figure out where you fall in the different categories. And there's some recommendations on what you can do. And then it'll lead you further into, in the program, what that means and how you can take advantage of knowing that information. Yeah, I always love knowing more about myself. I'm a huge fan of those quizzes too.
And I don't want to give away like all the secrets of the program that you've designed because it's your proprietary information, but are you finding that there's one fertility type that is most common?
Well, there are a lot of what we call soothed types, and that's somebody with a propensity towards stress, easily overwhelmed by stress, and how that affects their fertility. And in that, there are recommendations on, for somebody who's like that, we might recommend different supplements for that person or different dietary changes. Like, just to give you an example, for somebody like that, a soothed type who is prone to stress, may have PMS, gets irritable easily, and feels tense, a lot of muscle tension, which may be affecting blood flow to the uterus and the ovaries. And if you are in a state of stress, of chronic stress, your body is going to make less hormones for your sex hormones because it needs to give more to your stress response. Right. So that can really affect your ovulation, the regularity of your cycle, and ultimately your likelihood of conceiving.
It's almost surprising to me because what you just described feels so common to everyone. I'm surprised there's 4 other types.
Right. Yes. So other types, for example, is somebody who's been diagnosed with something like high FSH or low AMH. They have low back pain or coldness, like a distinct coldness in their abdomen or lower back. That's a unique type. And we want to nourish the kidney system in that. Another one is somebody who has weak digestion, bloating, might have heavy bleeding during their period. It's just a weakness of the spleen system. So it's really interesting. Once you know that person's type, then you suddenly can fast track them on what they should be doing.
That's so cool. And just for a point of clarification, when you say the kidney system or the spleen system, I shouldn't hear that there's something wrong with my kidneys as an organ or my spleen as an organ.
Exactly. And just like the soothed type is a liver imbalance, it has nothing to do with the amount you're drinking or hepatitis or anything like that.
Okay, so we should think of them as like a archetype or a concept or...
Exactly. And that's why I really don't talk about them that much in the program. I really keep it specific to the fertility types. And with the online quiz, it'll give you a specific one category answer. But in the program, you'll see that there's a possibility that you might be 50% of one and 50% of another, or maybe 30 and 70%. And so you go through the program and take those percentages into account.
That's so cool. And what I love about that is that as much as I do enjoy taking those tests, I also have that personality type where I reject any answers that come up. I'm like, no, I can't be that. Like, it's like I'm so much more nuanced and complex than simply that answer. So you've allowed
Yes, exactly. And when it comes to the program, I want to make sure that you're getting all the information that's relevant to you. So not pigeonholing you in one type and then missing out on the opportunity to really customize the lifestyle and diet recommendations to that 30% of whatever else you have.
Okay, so the program has these types, which you've invented, and a set of systems to nourish or attend to those types. And you said that those systems or those tools are research-backed. How did you collect all this for us? How did you put it all together?
A lot of reading. And a lot of this is information that I've just accumulated in my practice that has worked in my practice, knowing that different types have different recommendations to support the function of that organ system that I mentioned. Yeah, so food might be different. The amount of exercise or the types of exercise need to be customized to that type. And I always recommend to people that they should start with the first couple days of their cycle, taking a break. The most exercise you do is walking or maybe some yin yoga. And then as your estrogen ramps up throughout your cycle, you can ramp up your exercise intensity at the same level or progression as your hormones. Each phase of your cycle comes with a video and acupressure protocol to help support what's going on in that phase. Like we talked about menstruation during your period, it's about clearing the lining efficiently so that blood is red and it moves out in 4 or 5 days. There's not clotting or pain with the movement of the blood. And then the next one is about focusing on the quality of the egg and building the lining and supporting the increase in estrogen. With the next phase, it's to support ovulation occurring on time. And then finally, the final phase is about supporting either implantation or the appropriate hormones just for regulating your cycle.
Well, that's so cool. And do you recommend that to people who are not trying to conceive too? Is that just a general?
Absolutely. So Conceiving Zen was created, that online program was created with women trying to conceive in mind. But I almost want to copy the exact same information and give it a different name so that people know that it can be just as appropriate for anybody who wants to regulate their cycle. So someone who just decided they wanted to get off the birth control pill with no intention of getting pregnant anytime soon, but just wants to get in control of their cycle again.
Yeah.
Or someone who just has irregularity or has dysmenorrhea.
It's almost like just learning how to intuit what's going on with your body or understand what's going on with your body and be in tune with it.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. I just want people to align with their body. Their body has a plan. And if we align with it and support it with the appropriate tools, then we're happier. Our minds are happier. Our bodies are healthier. Alignment is I think the goal of everything, right? You want a career that aligns with your passions. You want foods and lifestyle choices that align with what your body needs.
It's so funny. And this is probably TMI for you and for our audience, but I was on an IUD for 7 years. And so I had the head and the body connection were I just had no sense for what was going on in my body. And I didn't even know that that was going on for me. Every once in a while I'd get a period and it was a huge shock. Oh my God, this thing. When I took myself off the IUD and spent a year allowing my cycle to get regulated and tracking it with apps and stuff, I felt that my sense of intuition and sense of self-knowledge changed dramatically just by taking that little device out.
Yes. Yeah. That was sort of interrupting the connection, it sounds like, and you removed it. It's not unlike what we do with acupuncture. We remove the impediment to communication throughout the body.
Oh my God. Good analogy.
Yeah. And we've talked about how to be in more alignment with your body. It is so exciting to start to recognize what you should be looking for at certain phases of your cycle so that you know when ovulation is coming. And you also can identify when you're making improvements in your cycle. You would notice pre-ovulatory symptoms like an increase in libido, an increase in mood, positive mood, and a change in your cervical fluid from something more initially it's lotion-like, and then it shifts more towards egg white-like quality, which if you looked at egg white quality under a microscope, you would see that it suddenly changes in how it looks into a superhighway, striated, so that it supports the movement of sperm towards the egg.
That's so cool.
Whereas the rest of the month, it's scattered and it actually would trap and block sperm from moving. But for those few days when you have egg white cervical fluid, it turns into this highway for them to get to the egg efficiently. So there's information in there that helps you to better connect with your body and see this as a process to support instead of kind of surrender to.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Whenever I hear something new as a non-medical professional about the human body, I am always so in awe of these things that are happening without our knowing.
I know.
So I can imagine that this would be incredibly useful for somebody who wants to develop a better connection to their own body, or for somebody who wants to stabilize periods independent of the pregnancy process. I also know that you guys offer some support mechanisms for anyone who's doing medical assistance with fertility. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I would love to. So when I launched Conceiving Zen, there was a lot of great interest. It's been really fun now getting the feedback, and some of the people who started it are now pregnant, which is really exciting. Who doesn't like pregnancy announcements and baby announcements?
Yeah.
But I felt so strongly that this could be helpful to families, and seeing it actually happen has been really exciting because I am a mom of two, and there's nothing more special than seeing someone getting to create the family that they had dreamed of.
Yeah.
And that's what I want for everybody. That's why I do what I do. And I wanted to reach more people. That's why I designed the online program. So when the feedback started coming in, I found that there were women who wanted to know, is there something I could be doing? I'm doing IVF. Are there any more specific instructions you might have? And so I decided to start with the Conceiving Zen program and then kind of update it so that it was more specific to an IVF process.
Great.
So there's definitely still support in the menstrual phase, but then we want to be more specific to the fact that we are stimulating the ovaries in the second part. Not only stimulating the ovaries, but also supporting them, because with an IVF cycle, you're asking your body to produce a vast increase in the number of follicles in a month and eggs. It's asking it to do months and months of work in a single cycle. So it's really hard on your body. And so not only are we helping to support the response to those meds, but also mitigate any side effects that might be caused by them.
So let's go back for a second. For any one of our listeners who has not gone through an IVF cycle or is, starting to think about it, what is happening in your body through an IVF cycle, and what is the doctor doing? How would acupuncture support it? Let's walk through what the whole picture looks like.
Okay, so you start with your period, then you're going to start on stimulation meds that help to stimulate the development of more follicles to release more eggs so that at retrieval, you can collect many eggs to work with.
Yeah.
Once they're retrieved and you also have a sperm sample delivered, whether that's donor or a male partner, then they're going to put those two together in a petri dish and let those connect and grow together for a little while. So that's the process of fertilization. And then in 3 to 5 days or so, depending on that person's cycle and what the reproductive endocrinologist suggests for that person or that couple, then there will be a transfer shortly after, unless you freeze them. Some people just get to the point of retrieval and either freeze their eggs or freeze the embryos for a later transfer.
Which is to say that anyone who's going through egg freezing in an effort to preserve fertility down the road is doing a portion of an IVF cycle.
Yep, kind of a little bit more than the first half of it.
Yeah.
Maybe 3/4 of it. So then you have your transfer once you've decided to use those embryos. And after that, you wait. You might be supported with progesterone. And then you wait. And that's what's called the 2-week wait. That's a really hard time emotionally for a lot of people, wanting to test, wondering if that symptom is pregnancy or PMS. So it's a time of a lot of stress and worry.
Yeah.
And so during the program's support is focused. And so we have not only acupressure, lifestyle and diet, but also guided meditation and visualization tracks throughout the program to support each phase. But especially important, I think, during that 2-week wait.
So yeah, I have participated in that 2-week wait, and it is like the most excruciating thing in the world. So if I'm hearing you correctly, during the part where you're stimulating, you're trying to get so many eggs that it's almost unnatural for your body to make.
It is definitely unnatural. So an IVF cycle tends to be a very manipulated cycle. You're not depending on your natural ovulation window or your body's natural ability to develop a dominant follicle and release an egg. You're releasing many eggs. So that can cause a lot of bloating, discomfort. So we work on symptoms like that while also supporting your body's response, because ultimately you want as many eggs to work with as possible. Good quality eggs, of course.
So you're basically, you and the doctor, the acupuncturist and the doctor together are working to help you produce as many things as possible without making your body freak out.
Exactly. Yes. So we help support what the stim meds are doing to get as many good quality eggs as possible. And then acupuncture and acupressure also work to manage any symptoms. Those meds can be really taxing to the reproductive system and to your body overall.
And I've heard some of them can make you a little crazy, emotionally crazy.
Right. Yes. It can be like having PMS, like to the max.
Super fun. Okay. So there's that part. And then is there anything that you can do as an acupuncturist or at home with the guidance and support of somebody like you to make sure that if an embryo is fertilized or put inside your body, it attaches and stays in your uterine lining?
Definitely. So a lot of that is the work that we do building up to transfer and implantation. So that's work done months in advance of the start of a IVF cycle, which is why if somebody is considering IVF, I recommend this program sooner than the start of the cycle, because there's a lot of preparatory work that's included in the program, recommendations on supplements, lifestyle and diets to make now, if you're planning to do it, whether that's like a month from now or 6 months from now. There are changes to be made that help with egg quality. Egg quality is the strongest predictor of the success of implantation.
And what does egg quality mean?
So egg quality is the genetic material, how good the genetic material is. So if you tested it, you want really healthy eggs. So the eggs that a woman has, she has from before she's born. you have the number of eggs you'll ever have. But the quality is not determined at that point. It's closer to those 3 months before an egg is actually released at ovulation or retrieved in an IVF cycle. So the biggest predictor of the success of, or the quality of that egg is its mitochondria, its energy source. I'd like to think of it as its battery pack.
Okay, cool.
So an egg with a good battery pack is going to be much more responsive to fertilization and stronger in the implantation process. And so that work in creating good battery packs is done in diet, lifestyle, and acupressure in that time building up to a retrieval.
I had no idea. That's so interesting.
Yeah, I know. It's really great, which is why the other thing I recommend to anybody who's trying to conceive naturally or with assistance is start to live your life and eat in ways you would as if you were already pregnant. So changing your caffeine habits, stopping drinking alcohol. Even if you find that you have any issue with an immune response or heightened inflammation in the body, things like gluten and dairy should be eliminated as soon as possible because those are major inflammatory foods and they will cause inflammation throughout the body that interfere with the ability to implant.
That's such a bummer to hear.
I know. I just talked to someone the other day who eats ice cream at the end of the day as a way to kind of veg out and eliminate some of the stress. And for most of those people, it's more about the routine, the ritual of it that gives them the stress reduction than the substance that they're taking in. So I have a recipe in there that's I call it the Fertility, and it's a cacao and maca and actually fertility supportive. It's for anybody. I mean, I call it the Fertility, but it's really for anybody who wants to manage the physiological effects of stress and how that affects your cycle, in particular because the herbs that I include in that recipe are adaptogenic herbs. And adaptogenic herbs are herbs that help your body adjust or adapt to the effects of stress in your body.
I love that you've thought about every little detail in what you're offering to your clients in this program.
I tried. I really did. I want to make sure that their bases are covered so that they don't have any reason to wonder what they're missing.
Yeah.
While also being conscious that, as we've said, it's a very stressful process, whether you're conceiving naturally or with support. And I don't want to inundate you with so much information that you're overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So I tried to make it simple, digestible, and very easily applied behaviors and information so that it can be applied without adding stress to your life.
What's so lovely about what you've created is that, however you go through this process, it can feel isolating. And for me, it feels isolating because I'm choosing to do it with a sperm donor. But even if you have a partner and you feel well adored and supported in the process, in general, it can be, emotional and lonely. And so to have somebody who's created a program that thinks about all of your needs feels really almost like a big embrace, really nourishing,
Oh, that's really, really nice to hear. Thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah, I love everything that you've thought about here. So I have a couple more questions and I want to be sensitive about your time too. But one of them is that you get to participate in the way in which people build families. You get to help people build their families. Has that informed the way you think about your own family or the way you think about family in general?
Absolutely. Actually, when you said that, I got full body chills. It never gets old for me thinking about the role that I have the privilege to play in the development of families, the creation of families. And absolutely, on a daily basis, I think about how grateful I am for my kids, for the opportunity to have been able to conceive them and carry them. I mean, of course, everyone gets frustrated with their toddler who doesn't listen, but with the exception of those moments, I'm so aware of what a privilege it is, what a blessing being able to create a family is. And that's I want that so badly for everybody. So anyone who wants that, and it's not for everybody, but the vast majority of people I see in my office and who I get to chat with online want that. And I want that so badly for them. So whatever I can do. And sometimes the work is out of my scope and I like to be well informed about other services that can support them.
Yeah. For some of us, it's a fertility process. And for some of us, the fertility journey ends and then the process, it goes into other places like adoption or fostering or choosing to build a family that does not involve kids. But it's nice to have this resource for the fertility process, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reality is that it won't end in conception and a pregnancy for everyone. And I want to deliver that to everybody, but that's not in my power. But what I can do is give you the tools that I know work for many and, what is in my toolbox to provide for you. And like I said, have resources for families or people who want to create a family through different means.
That's great. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you really wish we could communicate to the audience?
One of the things we didn't talk about that I find really important in the process of conceiving is finding your tribe, finding that community. In the IVF program that I designed, Conceiving Zen for IVF, I find that in particular, that can be such an important part of the process. And so in it, I have just a simple document that lists some of the Instagrams I find particularly empowering and supportive that have done a really beautiful job at creating community and supporting people through that process and informing them. Podcasts that I find really supportive of this process and books and things like that. So places where people can feel that they're not alone and in a real way connect with people, especially through social media. And actually, I'm playing with the idea and I'm leaning towards the idea of creating a Facebook group to go along with the program. Ultimately, everybody is in the same place of wanting to build a family.
I really love that. And I think you're right. The community is so critical. Whenever you're doing something big and bold, such as creating a family, having those cheerleaders and those supporters and those people you can cry to are really useful. But I also think the process of building a family and looking at all the different avenues and going down many of the more complex ones, such as IVF, it naturally forges relationship building because you're in the trenches, right? And you need those team members with you.
Yeah, absolutely. That is such a great analogy it's really like in the trenches. So yeah, you do. You need to lean on people. It's really hard to do it alone. It shouldn't be done alone. So whether that's, with the program, like you said, that feels like you're being supported by someone or by a bigger community of people online or in a Facebook group committed to your journey, I think it's such a critical element to the process.
Such good feedback, really thinking about holistically, and by holistically, I mean literally everything, your food, your exercise, your stress management tools, your acupuncturist, and then your community. It's all of the things, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it does. It takes all of the things.
So one closing question is, in a couple of words, how do you define family?
Ooh. Words jump out to me instead of like a phrase, words. So community is big for me. It doesn't matter bloodlines. I'm actually from a very complicated family. I have step siblings, half siblings, adopted siblings, all of different ages. There's a 30-year age range between my siblings, my oldest and my youngest. And my dad was married before he married my mom. And the woman he was married to had 2 kids before they married. So my dad adopted those 2 when they married. And then they had 2 more. And then nearly 20 years later, he had married my mom and had my sister and me. And then later, 5 years later, they divorced. And then my mom remarried and he brought with him 2 daughters. And we all get along. So it's about community over blood and about connection. So family can be that group that you find online who gets what you're going through and you feel very connected to them. It can be the people that all came from the same blood or the people that get together at the holidays, people who you feel connected to.
Yeah, that's great.
I have different families. I have the family that I birthed. I have the family that I can really connect with on a really deep level who I don't share blood with. It's about community, connection, and engagement, I think.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that part of your family life. It's really wonderful to hear that side of you. So, Ali, where can we find you and where can we find this great program?
Okay, so for local stuff, if you wanted to come in for acupuncture or just connect, the website is www.yintuitionwellness.com. It's intuition with a Y in front. And Instagram and Facebook are both Yintuition Wellness, one word. And you can find Conceiving Zen at conceivingzen.com. That's the fertility or cycle management program. And then Conceiving Zen for IVF is found at conceivingzenivf.com.
Excellent. All these wonderful resources and tools that we can use.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here today. We really appreciate getting to know a little bit more about how acupuncture can support general health, but also fertility and assisted fertility, and to get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. I could talk all day about this. It's something I'm so passionate about, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share it.
Thank you for listening to Stork'd with your host, Julia Carroll. This podcast is changing the conversation around the ways people define and create family. If you like what you hear, please support us by sharing with friends and following on Instagram at Stork'd_podcast. We also always appreciate it when you rate and review us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. For more information, visit storkedpodcast.com to sign up for our newsletter. That's STORKD podcast.com.